Hi, everyone. Hi, great camels. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, good day, wherever you are. We are happy to see you again. Today, on our course of KMGN, the course of Knowledge Creation and Innovation, we have a special guest. We will ask questions today very, very quietly because for him, it's not even morning now. He comes from Arizona. And even though he comes from Arizona, West, his specialty, his expertise is on knowledge in the East. So I think that we're going to have a fabulous and very different session today. And I'll stop here, and Riva, I'll please ask you to introduce yourself and to take the lead. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Please, you may start.
Okay, hi everyone. Good morning from Phoenix, Arizona. It's 5:02 in the morning here. My name is Riva Drummond. I am a clinical professor at the Carey School of Business, Arizona State University. My talk today is on knowledge creation in the Eastern culture. So let's do it. So let me tell you a quick story about my KM trip. Back in 2002, I finished my master's. Knowledge management was a huge thing back then in Brazil and the US. And I wanted to know if Chanwei Chu's strategic information model that you can see on the screen on the left side could be used to assess knowledge management initiatives. So I looked at 20 KM mini cases published at the time, and I use Chu's model of sense making, knowledge creation, decision making. You can see here on my left side here. So the goal of sense making was the long-term goal of sense making was that organizations could scan the external environment in search of relevant information about all environmental actors, suppliers, competitors, customers, demography, economics, so on and so forth. And so the organizations could gather, collect that data, and bring it inside to try to understand, try to interpret, and make sense of what was going on. Once the organization had made sense of the external environment information, you could use it for knowledge creation. An interesting thing about knowledge creation is that we need to make it more tangible. How does knowledge crystallize in an organization? Well, it becomes a few things. It becomes either products, services, processes, or business models. So the goal of knowledge creation is to use that information captured on the sense making process to create new products and services, improving existing ones, redesigning organizational processes, and rethinking and playing with business models. So after knowledge creation potential is assessed with that information that was captured outside, we have the steps of decision making. And as we know by now, decision making is constrained by the idea of bounded rationality. There's no best decision, only the satisficing one. I won't waste your time here, but you all probably remember Herbert Simon's Nobel Prize in Economics discussing this idea of bounded rationality. So guess what? I confirm choose strategic information arenas in those 20 mini cases. I highly recommend Chen Wei's book, The Knowing Organization, how organizations use information to construct meaning, create knowledge, and make decisions. That book really changed a lot of the way I was looking at the field. Well, short after my master's, I moved to my PhD in the School of Information Studies in UFMG, Federal University of Minas Gerais, Brazil. And a funny thing happened. Most of the faculty at that time, 2002, 2003, they opposed the idea of knowledge management. They had they had a lot of they have expressed their opposing views that no one can manage knowledge. Knowledge management is an oxymoron. So there's no such a thing as knowledge management. Well, so my first challenge was to prove, hey, you might not like the terminology, but there's a concept out there that needs to be apprehended. And I can prove that. So me and my very good research partner, Renato Rocha Souza, who is now living and working in Vienna, Austria, we came up with this idea. Well, you don't like the terminology, it's fine, but there's a concept. And we can prove that concept looking at three different places. We have lots of evidence and literature. Whether you like or not knowledge management, there's a lot of publications with knowledge management all the time. There's research, there are papers, there are working papers, so on and so forth. We can also prove by saying that there's organizational practices. Many organizations are naming some departments and functions knowledge management. And there's a social phenomenon, right? Social phenomenon made by Congress, events, public speaking, etc. So you don't like the terminology, but there's a concept we need to understand what that means. So with that in mind, I moved to work on the first in-depth qualitative study of KM back then in South America. And for that, I had secured research positions with three multinational enterprises, one from each of the sectors of the economy. From agriculture, I had Sugarcane Technology Center, one of the most interesting KM cases I've had. I published it, so if you want to take a look at it, CTC, Sugarcane Technology Center, CTC, the initials in Portuguese. I also looked at Siemens, the German giant at that time. And from the service sector, I had PricewaterhouseCoopers. PricewaterhouseCoopers not only had knowledge management as a formal function, as a department implemented, but they were also offering knowledge management services and consultancy to its customers. So after a long period of research, in depth, I took a deep dive in those organizations. I came up with this KM conceptual model, integrating all knowledge management practices I had seen so far. So I kept choose idea of strategic information use on the side. On the other side, on my right side here, I mapped all the tools and systems being used for knowledge management at the time. But what called our attention was this idea of enabling conditions. There's no knowledge creation in vacuum, right? For knowledge to be created, you need a space. And that space is not only physical, but also mental and virtual, right? Nonaka was discussing a little bit of that, calling it Ba. Ba roughly translates into space in Japanese. So we understood that a key component, the liaison between strategy and execution, was this idea of Ba, or enabling conditions, and I was set to map it out. So I finished my PhD, and then Dr. Chun-Wei Chu from the University of Toronto, which I mentioned earlier today, invited me to work with him on a postdoc. Well, in this postdoc, that's the paper we published, and we actually we scrutinized the idea of Ba. So we got to research and read everything that had been published by Ba or enabling conditions or enabling context at that time. So we reviewed all papers discussing Ba, enabling conditions, and enabling context. So it was really a challenging venture. We just heard of, that Nonaka, Yukihiro Nonaka, just passed away, but his idea of his work on Ba is something that we should mention. So in my research, we found the discovery was we found four major groups of enabling conditions for knowledge management. There's a social behavioral Ba, there's a cognitive epistemic Ba, there's a strategy-structure Ba, and there's an information systems and management Ba. So that idea, that research brought a lot of insights to my future research and work in the domains of knowledge creation, especially looking at innovation. That's the goal of my talk today. And Dr. Chu had this idea, let's bring this Ba research into a framework, a model. So we came out with this cube here. It's not a perfect one, by the way, as you can count. So our Ba model had three different dimensions. So we have enabling conditions. We listed all the groups of enabling conditions on one side. We thought of knowledge processes of creation, sharing, and use. And now we also analyzed the interaction levels, whether the individual, the group, the organization, or inter-organization. Okay, so then I had to move forward and work and get to work. And since then, I've been helping large companies to think about knowledge creation and innovation. So discussing knowledge creation in the Eastern culture as my topic today, I can share a little bit of my experience working with all those multinational companies, all those for the past 15 or 20 years. And most of our goal here is to work with the topic of innovation. So we look at knowledge creation with the lenses of innovation. And I'll tell you how my work with innovation has a few different perspectives. So the first thing I was working with firms was to teach them about one element of my BA called honest mistakes. But that was 20 years ago. But I think I lost something in translation, but I was actually teaching folks to accept failure as part of life. Most of the efforts we have, they end up in failure. And an interesting thing that we should make, there's a distinction between mistake and failure, right? Whereas failure happens in unknown territory. When you're exploring unknown territory, failure is likely the most thing likely to happen. So there's some new work on that. I don't know if you've been following this idea. There's a new work by Amy Edmondson from Harvard. If you want to read the book, not the research, the book is called The Right Kind of Wrong. And she's discussing failure happening in unknown territory, lots of great examples. And then she wraps it all up discussing psychological safety. So psychological safety for me is one element of BA. We couldn't coin that psychological safety at that time, but I'm glad she did, and that's how we advance research. So as I was saying, helping all those companies working in the domains of knowledge management, knowledge creation, but with a high focus on innovation. Okay, so I got some pictures here of our workshops, of training sessions, of lectures, of keynotes. The bigger picture is a work I've been doing since a couple of years ago. I started at AstraZeneca, working with their global senior teams out of Guadalajara, Mexico, and a few other places. So before we discuss, and I show you where my emphasis in innovation is, we need to revisit a very classic paper on sense making. This is a classic. This is entitled Toward a Model of Organizations as Interpretation Systems by Carl Weick and Richard Deft. This is probably back in the 80s, Academy of Management Review. But anyway, what's interesting about this? It gives us a sense-making starting point for discussing knowledge creation in organizations. So I have two axes here. My y-axis, I have the assumptions about environment. So what is this external environment analyzable or non-analyzable? And on my x, I have the level of organizational intrusiveness. Meaning how much the organization goes out to scan the external environment in search of relevant data about all the environmental actors I mentioned earlier. So you can have a very active posture where I formally and systematically scan the external environment in search of relevant data and information, or you can have a passive posture where the organization doesn't have a systematic active approach, but it takes any information that it can get by chance, by serendipity, it doesn't matter. So if you look here, I hope you can follow the clicker on my mouse. At business schools, we were trained, and we train people in discovery mode, meaning what? The environment is always analyzable, meaning information is out there, data is out there. All you have to do is go scan it, gather, collect that data, bring it inside. And our organization should have this active, proactive, systematically posture in scanning the external environment. So if discovery is your mode, you are managing for efficiency. I call that traditional management. And we use traditional management tools for knowledge creation. We use surveys, we use focus groups, we use competitive intelligence, we use market research. They all make sense in discovery mode, okay? But what happens when organizations are active? They actually systematically scan the external environment, but they go out there and either they can't find the data or the information because it doesn't exist, or they do find it, but can't make sense of it. So we have a different quadrant here. We call this enacting. And enacting, none of the tools of discovery make sense. Well, simply why? Why? Because market research, for example, doesn't make any sense. How can you research markets that don't exist yet? How can you do any surveys? How can you do focus groups? So why? Because here in enacting, you're facing uncertainty. So in discovery, you're managing for efficiency, but on enacting, you're managing for uncertainty. So discovery, efficiency, traditional management works. All the tools that you have learned about work pretty fine. But enacting, none of those tools make sense because we are managing for uncertainty. So we have to look for a different toolbox. So the point is here, that's when my innovation approach differs. I work with innovation as knowledge creation in discovery mode, where I'm managing for efficiency, but also have to teach executives to work uh, with managing for uncertainty. And none of us here, we appreciate uncertainty. Why? Because we don't speak the language. So the goal here is to become bilingual. I speak the language of traditional management, but I also speak the language of entrepreneurial management. They are two different approaches, and I need to speak both languages. So that's the basic idea. So let me give you just a few slides on discovery. Here, I'm connecting innovation, knowledge creation to strategy. You might be asking yourselves, but why? Well, if you go back and rethink what we have been reading about strategy as a statement of competition, you might know that all strategies seek growth. Year after year, when I was CEO of a few companies, president, the board would demand growth year after year. They would ask me, what are your growth plans for the next fiscal year? So guess what? The only best way to deliver growth year after year is innovation. So innovation fuels your growth engine, either by incremental innovation and continuous improvement, which is the land of discovery, traditional management for efficiency, or with innovation leaps, managing for uncertainty, looking at semi-radical or radical innovation. So for discovery, for traditional management, I would give executives a simple framework to think about. One, as you can see, strategy. What's your innovation strategy? What's your knowledge creation strategy? That was my question. How is it going to fuel the growth you need in your strategy? Second, once you have a strategy, let's discuss execution. What hurdles, what problems you foresee in execution? Third, do you have the tools and systems in place to execute your strategy? And four, how do I measure that? And as we know, measuring knowledge management initiatives and innovation, it's not an easy job at all. So this is the work for traditional management, for continuous improvement, for incremental innovation, for discovery mode. I was discussing with you. So I showed them some interesting frameworks to rethink and redefine innovation. I don't know about your experience, but mine is an interesting one. Been talking to all those C-level folks past 20 or so years. And when I asked them about innovation, I asked them, well, what's your definition of innovation? Most of them cannot come up with a shared common definition of innovation. And when I ask them for examples, all they can think of is innovation as technology or innovation as product. But it's a very myopic view of innovation. So I present this model by actually an IBM executive named Nick Donofrio. You can Google him, very interesting work. And Nick came with this definition that strategic innovation is knowledge creation, highlight this, knowledge creation, or value creation at the intersection of a company's technology, look here on my right side, and a company's business models. So value creation happens in between a company's technology and a company's business model. And we have 6 innovation levers to play with. So innovation is not only product, but also services, processes, the use of enabling technologies, value proposition, innovation in supply chain, and innovation in customer segments. In customer segments, I've always helped a company to think about how to attack non-consumption. folks who are not our customers, under which conditions could they one day become our customer? So I will wrap this up right now with metrics and rewards for innovation here. And frankly, that idea came from my knowledge management PhD, giving people this value chain perspective of metrics and rewards, looking at primary activities of the value chain. So we have metrics of inputs, of process, of product, or outcome, and results. But here lies the core of my talk today. How do we manage? How do we create? How can we manage knowledge creation when it comes to innovation under conditions of uncertainty? And most of the calls to work I have right now is to discuss innovation defined as managing under conditions of uncertainty. So I have all those huge companies like the Mayo Clinic, one of the most respected hospitals clinics in the world. They're based in Rochester, Minnesota. We also have a Mayo Clinic here in Arizona. We have a Mayo Clinic in Florida. They do amazing research, amazing people, smart people. AstraZeneca asking the same question: how can we lead knowledge creation and innovation if we're facing uncertainty? And Bradesco, one of the biggest banks of Brazil, also had the same question. So they were okay with this idea of innovation as traditional management, as managing for efficiency. But they told me that, hey, the tools we have been using for innovation under discovery, under traditional management, they don't work when we're facing uncertainty. And worse, our executives don't speak that language. So my goal right now is to help companies face uncertainty. And I have so many different calls about uncertainty. For example, folks are asking me about digital business models. We happen to have played with business models since Alex Osterwalder's book, the Business Model Generation. I don't know if you read his PhD work. I took the time to read his entire PhD work. It's a design science approach, very interesting to look at. And so customers are bringing this high level demands. For example, how can we apply AI in medicine, in healthcare? So how can we apply, for example, how can we develop AI solutions for pathology? And I found, I've been discussing with them some research findings that I've been looking for. For example, someone applying AI in pathology with business models. We also created for Mayo Clinic its own Lean Innovation Canvas. I have this great physicians with top-notch research, but deeply need to learn to speak the language of uncertainty as well. So to make things happen and to look now, to pause now and look at innovation as managing under uncertainty, I start by asking them to forget all they have learned about innovation, because all they have learned is about coming up with solutions. As you can see, the first thing I need to do here is to help those executives define and create a common knowledge, a common sense, a shared view, a shared concept of innovation. And I make it very simple. I bring them two definitions of innovation. Number one, innovation is managing under conditions of uncertainty. So you embrace uncertainty. You embrace you don't know. You don't have the answers. That's very hard for some people, especially the ones with PhDs in C-level position. We have to embrace that. We don't know. That's the first thing. We're facing uncertainty. I have a second definition of innovation that moves to the idea of jobs to be done. And that idea is a little bit more interesting because when it comes to innovation, I ask executives to forget about technology and product specs because frankly, no one cares. Customers don't care. They don't buy it. So when it comes to innovation, forget about technology, forget about product specs, and try to answer a very complex, tough, difficult question. What is the problem your customers, prospects, suspects are trying to solve? What are the tasks they are trying to execute? And how can you innovate or help them at a profit for you, making their lives easier, cheaper, simpler, faster, and more convenient? I always love giving this example of when I moved to the States, my wife forced me into cleaning the house, and she assigned me to do all the vacuum cleaning. And I hate that. I hate vacuum cleaning, those big bulk dust bags, those long cords. I have, back problems. So I was thinking, what can I hire to do this job on my behalf? So I went to a paradise shop here in the States called Bath, Bed & Beyond and bought a Roomba robot. I have no idea how Roomba works. I have no idea what technology is inside. I don't even know what processor it uses. I don't know how it scans the environment. I hired Roomba to do something I didn't want to do. So that's the core idea of the job to be done. So if I give them the definitions, the second thing is let's split innovation into 4+1 steps. Remember, here we are managing for uncertainty. We should not use traditional management method. So innovation can be deployed into 4+1 steps. Innovation is, as you can see here, follow my clicker here, insight generation. Second, problem framing. Third, prototype dash solution. Fourth, business model. Those four elements, I call them entrepreneurial management. And we are managing for uncertainty. Once we have solved uncertainty through all the four steps, we jump to the +1 element, which is scale. And when I jump to scale, I move back to traditional management and I have to manage for efficiency reasons, efficiency problems. So I give them a definition and I give them 4 steps of innovation to think about. And I'm mainly working with lean innovation. What's the problem here? Executives, they want to jump right into into step number 3, which is solution. Oh, I have an app, I have a solution, I have an idea. And I said, no, this is not how it works. In traditional management and management for efficiency, we can come up with solution and move it. But here we can't. We don't, because we don't even know if we have a problem worth solving. How can I jump to solution? So all of them, they jump to solution. I have to slow them down. They're not happy about this, but I take them back to insight. And the goal of insight is to savor surprises. Insights are things we did not know. And the only way to learn, to gain new insights, is to take executives and students out of the classroom. Why? Because the classroom is a very safe space to learn. I have no idea how folks teaching entrepreneurship and innovation can think that they can teach someone to do any of that inside a classroom. They have to go out there to real world, talk to strangers, meet strangers, and make things happen. Because one thing you're going to see is I have this motto with me. This is a phenomenal work by Nathan Thurr and Jeff Dyer. If you want to take a look, it's called The Innovator's Method. I read the research, but if you want to just jump fast to this, you just read the book. But one thing that you have to remember throughout this process is innovators innovate, customers validate, not the other way around. So never ask customers what they want for innovation. They don't know. That's your job. But as you discover and you move through the 4 steps, you need customer validation in all steps. For example, a traditional management tool we use every day, brainstorming. Brainstorming doesn't work for innovation. And people get really upset when I say, oh, it does work. We do it all the time. No, it doesn't. Well, brainstorming doesn't work simply for this because it does not involve customers, first thing. And if your boss is in the meeting with you brainstorming, your boss is the HIPO, H-I-P-O, the highest paid opinion. In most cultures where there's high power distance, no one is going to challenge the boss opinion. Okay? So I adapted a Thurr's and Dyer's framework to help executives navigate knowledge creation under conditions of uncertainty. So I put you have the same 4 steps here: insight, problem, prototype, business model. +1 is scale, but I help them see things that they can't see. I give them key activities, tools, tests, and outcomes, and we can organize a framework. This framework is no recipe, no prescription. You are free to add to it. You're free to remove from it. It doesn't matter. But just have as this as an organizing framework for this topic. So what's interesting here? You tell people to generate ideas, okay, and they come back to me and say, well, my boss, my firm asked me to generate ideas for innovation, blah blah blah. We don't know how. They asked me to frame relevant problems worth solving. I don't know how to do it. So this is why you got to give your executives tools and tests. So what are the tools for problem framing? Which tools do I have for prototyping? What tests can I run throughout each of the steps to make sure I'm moving in the right direction. So this is my first work, is to slow them down, define innovation, deploy innovation into 4 steps, and give them a framework. So key activity. For example, what's the goal of insight generation? If you're leading innovation efforts, knowledge creation under conditions of uncertainty efforts, you should make sure that everyone understands the key activity for each of the steps. What are you doing in insight? You're not solving any problems here. You're savoring surprises. What is the key activity or problem? Well, here you're trying to frame the job to be done. You're not solving it yet. What's the key activity on prototype? Well, if you have found in the previous step a problem worth solving, a monetizable problem, then you can start scratching ideas for a prototype. So that's the plan here. Once they finish, I have this entire framework ready for them. They have a list of all key activities, as you can see. They have a list of tools. Which tools can I use, for example, in business model? How can I test the psychological price range that customers are willing to accept? So I can use a PSM, a price sensitivity meter, as you can see here. So now executives, managers, they have a framework that allows them to know which tools and which tests they can run inside every single aspect of innovation as knowledge creation under conditions of uncertainty. So this is the basic idea. I'm going to run you through the 4 steps real quick, and then I'd like to open for a Q&A, and we can talk a little bit about all this. Okay, so insight generation is the first step. So you have to slow people down here. They will jump to solution. Oh, I have this idea, I'm going to do this. No, you go here basically to generate insights. And insights, as I said, are things you did not know. Insights are surprises. So every step, I remind them of the key activity, savor surprises. You should learn new things here. If you're not learning, there's no insight. And the catalyst for insight is surprise. No surprise, no insight. And I have to relist tools, tests, and outcomes they must use. And you must involve customers. So I send them out, and I meet with them. We run those sprints in a week with C-level executives. With students, I slow down, but I force them out. Americans, they hate talking to strangers. It's an interesting thing. I don't know if you like reading Malcolm Gladwell's articles on the newspaper, but a series of new articles he came up with this new book called Talking to Strangers. But anyway, let's take a look at this. So this is the face you should have when you're savoring surprises. You should be surprised. That's things you do not know about. All right. So I teach students about tools for insight generation. I take them back to the 5+1 discovery skills of questioning, observing, networking, experimenting, associational thinking, and Einstein's combinatorial play, looking across cultures, industries, etc. And I ask them to come up with their own tools. So as you can see here on my left side, big companies like AstraZeneca, like Mayo, like Google, all of them, they have huge information systems to capture insights. So if any executive, any manager has an insight, all he or she has to do is go to the system like Bright Idea, like Spigot, like AHA, and document that. But small entrepreneurs, they don't have the luxury. So I ask them to create their own insight capture template. So proper documentation is needed on the field. If you're talking to strangers, if you're approaching strangers in order to gain insights about problems worth solving, you should, be able to properly document it. So they get creative here, but the basic insight capture template is made of users, need, surprise, and insight. All right. Okay, I give them lots of examples of how can they get creative, creating their insight capture templates. A day in the life worksheet, a learning card by Strategizer. You can download it at the Strategizer website. And here's some actual work from executives I see here. So they get out there, they gather their insights, they organize their insights somehow, then they get to vote for the best insights. When senior executives tell me it's hard uh, to work with insight generation and come up with their own systems or templates, I show them this. So this is how one of my students put the whole process in a single slide. And then they are really, oh, this is interesting, this is amazing. And then I tell them, surprise, surprise. So this was done by one of my undergraduate students. So if she could do it with no work experience, well, I expect that you do amazing things with it. Once we have discovered new insights, we're going to take these insights to the next step, which is problem framing. And I have a critical aspect here. But remember one thing, all the 40 steps, you have possible outcomes. One of the outcomes, the common outcome is called pivot. You can and you should pivot in all 4 steps. If you haven't found any surprising insights, just pivot, abort it, do it again. You can only move to problem when you have found insights about problems worth solving. You want to test those insights to see if they are problems worth solving. So at the insight step, quantity is a better predictor than quality. So I encourage them to vote for 15, 20, 25 insights. So now what they're going to do is the most voted insight is taken to the next step of problem solving, problem framing. And they need to tell me if that insight is a problem worth solving. To learn if that problem is worth solving, they should apply tools and tests, as you can see. So no problem, no opportunity, because no one will pay you to solve a non-problem. So what's the goal here? Again, remind them of the framework. So what tools can you use to see if those insights or problems worth solving? So we're trying to see if we can find monetizable problems. They should run tests. They love putting out smoke tests. And they should have an outcome that can be a customer vision statement, or you can pivot. So let's take a look at the problem step. Which problems are worth solving? Not all problems are worth solving. We're looking for bumps. Bumps is my acronym for big, unsolved, meaningful problems worth solving. So here, I'm mostly the tip I offer here is follow emotions. Strong emotions always lead to problems worth solving. So I tell them that they should look for a pain or a desire, but most likely a pain. When you see people complaining, cursing, crying, wasted hours, follow that lead. So I'm looking for struggles, difficulties, obstacles, dilemmas, challenges, opportunities, issues, etc. So I'm looking for bumps. Monetizable problems, if you want to write this down, are problems that keep people awake at night. Problems that cause people great stress, that consume their time deeply. So that's the kind of problems we're looking for. Remember, not all problems are worth solving. I make this difference by telling people about shark bites, problems worth solving. People would readily pay for you to solve this. And mosquito bites, problems that exist, but people will recognize them as a problem, but they wouldn't pay for you. They wouldn't pay you to solve them. Okay, so they use tools such as a customer journey line. They do a complete pain storming of customer activities based on those insights. And now we are looking at the unhappy faces. Check this out. So I'm looking for pains, as you saw, as you probably noticed here. And when they have discovered those pains, they should run what we call a root cause analysis, asking why 3 times. Oh, this is a good example of this. So they learned that the problem is malnourishment. But that's the problem at the surface. They need to take a deep dive to figure out the job to be done or the problem. So that's why if in their pain points, malnourishment shows up across multiple parts of the pain storming and the customer journey line, we should elect malnourishment. But that's the problem at the surface. I need to take a deep dive. Let's go to the bottom of the sea. Why? Why are our children malnourished? Well, because we don't have enough food. Keep asking why. Why? Because we don't have, we have poor soil. Why? Because we have no fertilizer. So the problem of malnourishment is not malnourishment, it's lack of fertilizer. So that's a learning journey for all people. They're learning with the process, and I'm uh, stopping them from solving the problem. You're not solving anything yet. Here, you want to know if that those insights are monetizable problems or problems worth solving. They can also use ethnography. I teach them about ethnographic research. I call this fly on the wall. You're just observing people. I'm not sure if my very good friend Dr. Eric Choi is watching me, but the first time I was invited to Hong Kong before teaching at Hong Kong Paul U and Hong Kong University back then, I was so impressed and amazed to be in Asia that I would just be a fly on the wall on the subway, just observe how people live their lives in a different context. Okay, this is a kind of a test that a lot of people do. As you can see here, Christian Gregory posted something about making a custom LED neon signs. This is a typical smoke test. Just post an ad, a question. He doesn't have anything. He hasn't built anything yet. He's just trying to see if that problem is a problem worth solving. If people like myself with pinball machines would pay him to solve that problem. Or they can run cold call tests with experts. So they're trying to learn if that problem is a problem worth solving. They start writing sacrificial concepts. I encourage them into this domain of becoming creators. I personally believe that the world is made for creators, not for people who are copying stuff. Just come up with your ideas, sketch what you have, create things. And then if the problem is worth solving, we write a customer vision statement saying, stating who is the customer on this side here, who is not the customer. They always need to provide supporting data of their field exploration. They describe the job to be done, and they write a simple vision of how they are going to solve that problem. This simple vision here is mostly a theoretical prototype. That's our connection from problem to prototype. And remember, innovators innovate, customers validate, customers should be involved in all steps. Okay, and then we move to prototype. I love this quote by the Kelly brothers. I happened to visit Tom and David Kelly before they paid me a visit at HSM in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I love this idea that stop the blah, blah, blah and bring me a prototype. Show me how your idea works. Show me how your concept is solving a problem, a customer core problem. So that changed a lot of my own perspective. So again, I present them the model. I give them the tools and tests. For example, if you need to prototype, what can you use? So they learn about solution storms. They learn about the 4 types of prototypes. They run tests to see if they're moving in the right direction or they should pivot. And as you can see here, oh, by the way, I have a very cherished memory here from my work with master students at Hong Kong Poly U. I brought my Legos and I allowed them to prototype, and they were very creative, very, very creative. They built an entire city at that time. I can't remember exactly what we were doing, but I remember it was a fun, engaging experience. And their concept brought lots of different ways to solving the problems we're looking at back at that time. But one thing that I recommend here is you should slow people down here. I do not allow any executive, no matter how senior the executive is, C-level or not, or manager, to use technology at this stage. I force them to go back to cardboard and paper. And so those are the prototypes we use right now. So I don't know if you heard about the Wizard of Oz prototyping, where you're faking. We call those pretendotypes. We have a prototype. I have a very interesting IBM story I learned here with folks from IBM. But basically, I'm slowing people down and forcing them to think through every single aspect of what they're trying to build in order to solve the problem that they framed in the previous step. So they come up with this crazy stuff made of cardboard, and then they have to design step by step of how their prototype is solving the problem. So we have to have a clear understanding. I use a methodology called CRIT, or design critique, a wonderful methodology I learned in design schools. And then we run tests. I don't know if you, when you're navigating the internet or you're just going on your smartphone, sometimes you see some ads, and some of those ads are games. Those games have not been developed fully, because game development takes millions of dollars. So when you watching YouTube or on Instagram and you saw those ads, that's a 30-second ad. That's a game. I don't know if you remember this game, a king. You have to save a king, right? So they're giving you a sample of a prototype to see how you interact with that prototype tapping on the screen. So that's when they know that they should move forward with the game or they should board or pivot game production here. Then we run tests to see if your solution works. If you have used knowledge, you have created knowledge to manage uncertainty. We use tests such as the WOW test. The WOW test is an interesting one because I call WOW WTF, and you probably know what WTF stands for, right? So when those executives, those managers create their prototypes to solve that problem, they think they're going to stay safely inside a classroom. So no, I have mini vans parked outside. Each group is going to go to a different part of town, and you're going to show that prototype to real people. And the first test is the wall test. When they show the prototype, they should look at people's face, right? If they do a wow or if they do a WTF, you have instant feedback of what worked and what doesn't work. We also run payment tests. We fake payment tests. It's not enough to say I'll buy your prototype or I'll buy your solution. No, you got to actually show me proof that you were about to give me your money. Then tools such as solution storms, etc. And then I force them to action. Those are executives coming up with their own solutions, creating their own solutions. So they come with minimum awesome prototypes, MVPs, so on and so forth. Then I jump to business models. Students are very familiar with business models due to the popularity of the business model canvas. I found it good and bad at the same time because sometimes we oversimplify the idea of business models. They are not as simple as they look like. So you should facilitate the problem. My advice is if you haven't figured out how to delight a customer with your solution, don't even think about the business model. You're not ready yet. You have to run your tests to make sure your customers are happy with your solution. So then again, show them the framework. Which tools should they use for business modeling? So I bring, the idea of a price sensitivity meter. If you have a background in economics, you remember it's called Van Westendorp's price sensitivity meter. They test the psychologically accepted range of prices for a given solution. They come up with the business model canvas, the business model snapshot, a consumption chain. They can use love metrics, but I highly recommend at the business model stage to use financial metrics, either a P&L, a cash flow statement, something like that. And then we move to that's the business model snapshot here. That's a price sensitivity meter. And they have fun. Check it out. They're learning to face uncertainty. They're having a lot of fun. This is probably the first thing I do to break the ice. It's probably a marshmallow challenge. That's a huge prototype session here, and that's how we do it. As I was telling you, the whole process I use design critique. Participants learns that we are not attacking them. It's not a personal attack. You should not be aggressive. You should not be disrespectful, but we are attacking ideas and concepts. And when you sit down and offer them some criticism, they receive immediate feedback of what worked and what doesn't work, and so they can go back and improve it, do it again, repeat the process. So what's next for this? Well, my goal here is to approach knowledge creation through the lenses of uncertainty. That's my focus here on innovation, on knowledge creation in the Eastern Coach. Most of my work is done now around knowledge creation and innovation, especially looking at uncertainty. So I got that from the World Economic Forum in 2015, and it's discussing 2025 this year. Did those technology executives, did they get it right or no? You can take a quick read here. And now we're moving to a new research where everyone is talking about AI. Here at Arizona State University, I think we're the only university with a partnership with OpenAI. So we have access to a lot of the features most people have to pay to use. But then WEF just came out with a future jobs report. And if you take the time to scrutinize it, you see the role of knowledge creation under conditions of uncertainty, how this is going to grow even more. By the way, you can read here economic uncertainty as we have been discussing. So that's all I have to present today. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I think if you guys want, Moria, let me know if we can have a short Q&A session here.
Of course, that's exactly the time. And we had a question on the way regarding someone that didn't yet understand your new definition of innovation, but I think that already I didn't stop you because I think you expanded 2 minutes later. So here I see Rudy nodding his head. And in a Western way, not in Eastern. I want to start with a question, and then we'll open for additional people. I loved the ideas you presented. I didn't understand why they are Eastern and not Western.
Well, I don't pretend to, in this discussion here, tell you what folks in the Eastern are all discussing and thinking about innovation. My goal was to bring to you what the demand on our work here in most universities and consultancy have been. So they are all in the domains of knowledge creation, looking at innovation. But I have no intention here of saying it's exhausted. That's all we do. No, most of the work moves to knowledge creation and innovation under conditions of uncertainty. That's what we have been doing. I'm not seeing a lot of knowledge management offerings around here. And it's been a while. It doesn't mean that knowledge management is no longer relevant. It's quite the contrary, right? A lot of knowledge management practices we studied back then are now incorporated with different names. So we're still working with knowledge management under new labels. So a lot of those knowledge management practices I studied back then are somehow implemented, and they have different names along the way. So I think that the novelty here, the demand is how can we work knowledge creation under conditions of uncertainty? That's the topic. That's my approach here today. And just to tell you that we cannot use traditional management tools when thinking about uncertainty. We need to learn new tools, new processes, new ways of thinking. So the goal is to take those managers into becoming bilingual. I speak both languages of innovation. I can use traditional management, but also I can also use entrepreneurial management, and then lean innovation has a huge makes a huge difference here. And folks, just to wrap it all up again, those managers and executives, when I discuss innovation, they can't define it, and they jump right to solution, and that's not what they have to do.
Slow down. 4 steps, slow down. Start with insights, go to problem, core problem 3 times why. Just then afterwards, you can go to the solution. Also then do it step by step, understand what you're doing, prototype it, even if you emulate it like in the IBM case. And just later on, you can go to a business model, to the beloved canvas that business management schools teach starting with on day 1 and not on day 30. Yet we don't finish because after these 4 steps, we have to scale up. So let's open it to questions. Thank you. I understood. Yes.
It's interesting that you said that, but we draw the process inside problem prototype business model in a linear way. But it's just as a pedagogy, right? It doesn't happen that way. It's fuzzy. Sometimes you move from problem back to insight, and so it's just to make sure that the process is not linear at all, because uncertainty is not linear, right?
Wonderful insight. Thank you for adding that. People have questions. Yes, Vincent. Oh, our dear Vincent. Vincent, who's the one who connected us with Riva. Yes, Vincent, please go ahead. You're muted.
It's been a long time since I've seen Vincent online. Where is he?
Bangkok. Today. Vincent, we can't hear you.
Test.
There you go.
Test.
Yeah, now.
Hey, good to see you. Good to see you again, Riva. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you so much for waking up so early also. In fact, in 2 or 3 sessions, we will have Yves Pigneur with us, who was the advisor of Oscar Walder, who designed the business model Canvas. So he will talk to us about their latest book. So just wanted to get a bit of clarification. I mean, your approach looks very similar to the design thinking process. I mean, you label your stage slightly differently, but we can see the empathy or understanding the problem, framing it, and ideating and prototyping and so on, which is, I mean, it can be called differently, but at the core, I think there is a lot of similarities. So nowadays we see, I mean, you clearly stated that, I mean, up to now you were trying to keep people away from computers and so on. Now I've been teaching also some courses on design thinking, and nowadays I still get the students to go through the traditional way like you do, but also I get them to do in parallel using some generative AI tool to see how can they complement or support or expand their own vision or their own interpretation or whatever through the use of generative AI tools. So are you also going towards using generative AI as another tool to support this process, or you, in your opinion, you still want to stay away from whatever comes out from generative AI tools?
Oh, no. I fully agree. As I was saying, the framework is an open one. It's not a prescription. Folks are free to add to it, to remove tools and tests from it. No, I'm a big fan of Gen AI. As a matter of fact, when Gen AI came, most of the faculty was, oh, it's the end of the university as we know it. Blah. I said, no, this is absolutely nonsense. Every time you have a new tech, bring it to the classroom and see how you can explore that potential. But back to your design thinking idea and linear innovation, I see many differences. Well, the design thinking approach was made popular by the folks at the D School at Stanford. I don't know if you heard about it. They have a wonderful.
Yeah, of course,
I met Robert Sutton in São Paulo in a conference and said, well, you should look at what the design. So the process is a little bit the same, but I think linear innovation brings a lot of the elements that we should include in terms of management tools, right? I mean, we work with profit and loss statements. We run detailed price sensitivity analysis. So we bring different elements to this and bring the idea of managing under conditions of uncertainty more clear along the way. What I feel is that students hate, especially executives hate the process at the beginning because they have to work, right? They thought, I'm coming to a training, I'm going to be in city. No. You got to go out there, talk to strangers, make it happen, but bring data along the way. So every single aspect has to be documented, and we need to find data along the way. I always wrap it with, I believe in God, everyone else should present data here. So they should have data throughout the process, and they can actually include anything they want, like you include in Gen AI. I don't know if you're paying for the license or the university is paying for your license, but ChatGPT operator, I think it's a wonderful luxuries aid for the process.
Thank you, Riva.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no additional questions, that's time to wrap up because we are running out of time. Thank you so much, Dr. Riva Drummond. I've learned a lot, both frameworks, methods, tools, and good practices on the way.
I call them TTO.
I call them good practices, whatever name works.
I call the framework so students can remember.
Oh.
TTOs, tools, tests, outcomes. It's not enough to talk about design thinking, about the steps. I always ask, okay, give me your TTOs. What are your tools, your tests, and outcomes? And when they present, that's different from design because they have to show me evidence of tools, tests, and outcome backed up by data.
Wonderful. Kindly remind you, please send me your slides if possible so we can share them as a PDF for those who have participated. I'll be waiting. Thank you very much. And next week we will be learning from Dr. Yves Pinguo. I hope Vincent,
I've been here, I believe. Right?
Yeah.
Yves Pigneur, yes.
Yves Pigneur.
On his
Yves-
frameworks of innovation.
Yes. Okay. See you
So,
all very much.
good
See you
morning, good
next
evening,
week.
good night, everyone. See you next week, and thank you. A big thank you and applause to Dr. Riva
Riva,
Drummond.
yeah.